Hi, I'm Sean. Like Tees said, I studied at Curtin and have known Tees for years. Since then, I've done my master's in New York and one or two other things I'll leave you guys to judge whether they're interesting. This talk I have today can be one of two titles. It could either be the one you see. Anyone like the pie joke? Anyone? Yes, okay, excellent. I am in a room with math nerds. Or it could also be called this, which I hope at least a few of you will take up the option of. All seriousness, all jokes aside, sorry, and all seriousness inside, how many of you are actually interested in becoming one variety of scientist or another? That's good, that's good. Last time I asked that question in this sort of room, there was about 3 hands. Science means a heck of a lot of different things to a heck of a lot of different people. All sorts of sciences are science, from psychology to aeronautics to forensics. Science is a really big field. And these are some of the things that I've studied as a scientist. It's a pretty broad list, right? I'm including a whole bunch of things when I say studied. For instance, astronomy, I got into that when I was in year 1. And I really loved looking up the stars, and I got a telescope, and I bought some books. One of them was a university book, and I couldn't understand a thing in it, and I'm not a prodigy. And then I got rid of that by year 5 and got into like marine biology and volcanology and all sorts of weird stuff. But then in high school, I actually started studying proper science, year 11 and 12, stuff you guys are about to get into. Geography, physics, and chemistry, they were the main ones. And then I got into geophysics. I liked geography and I liked physics, so I Googled them both together. And I got geophysics. That's how I worked out what I was going to do. And I spent the next 3 years studying geology, geochemistry, geophysics, maths, other physics, all sorts of stuff. A geophysicist does do the physics of the Earth. He looks at how all the forces combine together, how plates work and tectonics and earthquakes and that sort of stuff. I find gold and oil and that sort of stuff. I found 2.5 million ounces of gold once. That's worth a lot of money. But basically my job was, how much? I got $150 a day of that money, but it wasn't actually the gold itself, no. Oh, now I've lost my train of thought. So all of that comes to a geophysicist tries to work out what's under the ground without digging a big hole and getting under there to actually pick it up. That's the difference between a geophysicist and a geologist. Geologist needs it in their hand or where they can see it. After that, I did geophysics for about a year before I went and studied in New York City on the other side of the planet to do my master's in sustainability management. And that's where I covered the other side of this list here. I did statistics, I did environmental science, I did climate science, I did economics, human biology, toxicology. Sustainability management is managing things in a way that sustains them. The important part is that it really encompasses everything. It's making sure your company saves energy because that saves you money, and a company that makes money is a company that keeps going. It's making sure that your government communicates with its people because a government that actually knows what the people want, does the right things by the people, and stays in government. It's things that are designed to make sure that we can live continuously, forever, without harming the next generation's chance. It's maintaining a lifestyle that we like without taking away from the next generation's lifestyle. And that, I found, was really important to me. Geophysics was great. Geophysics was rocks and physics and data and massive Excel spreadsheets that I had to do huge computations to, and finding 2.5 million ounces of gold. And then at the end of the day, I typed it up in a report and I emailed it away and I never heard about it ever again. And then I did something cool. I went up to a mine site, which will remain nameless, because I think I might not be allowed to say, where there is quite a well-known protest going on. And up at that particular mine site that I'm sure none of you have ever heard of in the northwest of Western Australia, it so happened that I was recorded by protesters right up in my face with a video camera saying, "How do you feel about ruining this country for your kids? How do you feel about destroying the planet for your grandchildren and making sure that your kids can never enjoy this beautiful country?" If you look on YouTube, you can find that video of me sitting there going, "I'm just doing my job, man. All I want to do is work out if they can build a building here. I don't actually want to destroy any of that sort of stuff." Matter of fact, 2 weeks before that, one of my friends had emailed me and said, "Hey, I'm going up to join this protest up there. Do you want to come along?" I said I was busy. And so after that, I really sort of wasn't sure what I was going to do as a geophysicist. So I've ended up going from a high school student, like you guys, doing the same sort of stuff, going all the way through geophysics, being a technician, which means doing whatever the hell they tell you, getting coffee, running around, doing terrible jobs, through studying geophysics, being a geophysicist, through getting my sustainability management degree, all the way to become a community development officer. How does that sound in terms of science? Not very scientific, one would think. There are three things which means that I am quite happy with how much science is involved in community development. One is that, as I'm sure your science teachers have said to you if they're worth anything, is that science is everywhere. It really is, and it sounds like a stupid thing, but it's actually true. The other thing is that science is science. It doesn't matter if you're a psychologist, if you're a neurologist, if you're a mechanical engineer. All of these things are fundamentally the same thing, just applied to a different textbook. And number three, like the man says, I followed what I liked. So science really is everywhere. I saw someone with a shirt. There you are. Oh no, there was another one. There's a genius one too. The amount that you can learn if you know how to read science, if you know how to research science, the amount you can learn with Google is ridiculous. You really have no excuse for not knowing about any subject before you talk about it or when you get into a conversation about it these days. I can learn inside a week enough to be conversant, or even more importantly, to listen to someone who knows more than me and understand what they're saying just by using Google for an hour or two. Science is all science. These 5 things, any of those 5 things, if you're doing those 5 things, you are doing science. Hands up who thinks economics is a science. I'm surprised. I am very surprised. A year and a half ago, I wouldn't have said so. Why is it a science? Yes, sir.
Because it involves the scientific model of like creating models for economics and then like evaluating them and then going back and looking at them and seeing if they're correct. So it's like using the scientific method.
Right. Does it matter that I cannot predict how many of you are going to buy iPhones? Why not? If I'm an economist working for Apple, I want to know how many of you are going to buy iPhones. In fact, my boss is telling me to tell you that. No? It doesn't matter in the same way that a physicist or a chemist does not need to be able to tell you exactly which atoms in here are vibrating in which direction. When I worked out that economics was a science, I got really interested in what else is a science. How many different social sciences are real sciences? You'll hear a lot of people, if you get to uni, when you get to uni, talking about how physics is the only real science, the only hard science. They're full of it. Anything where you apply these steps is a science, and believe it. Finally, I got to do some cool stuff. This photo is terrible and makes me look like an idiot, but I was there on the steps of Columbia University. That's one of the top 10 universities in the world. It was built in 1746. I realized that that's actually before white people had got to Australia, except for a couple of people that ended up dying. I was flabbergasted to be standing there in this place that's so old that King James the whatevereth was the one who wrote on the foundation stone in the corner. I learnt from people there that were freaking amazing at what they do. The people that when you look up online to find a web source and that source references someone and all of those academic papers reference one paper, I learned from that guy. That's amazing stuff. I did the sort of courses where I said to the lecturer, I'm sorry, but if you pump a whole bunch of carbon dioxide under the water to a sufficient pressure, then yes, the carbon dioxide will sit underneath the water and stay there because the pressure from the water on top means that the carbon dioxide is more dense than water. It will stay there and it will freeze. But what happens if when it freezes, it's disturbed by a current or something like that? What happens? And he would say to me, no one knows. That's the forefront of science. That's the kind of cool stuff that, for me anyway, I found cool. That's the kind of stuff that you can learn about through doing science or experiment with through doing science. So this is where I found 2.5 million ounces through following my passion. This is in the year after high school. This is before I'd even got a degree. I went and got coffees for geophysics guys. In fact, I looked up in the yellow pages geophysics and called the first number and managed to get a job there because they needed people to do stupid things, like drive around on a quad bike all day for 8 weeks, camping out in the bush with 6 other people and no one else for 300 kilometers, and take a reading once every kilometer at a specific GPS position. By doing that, we traveled on quad bike the distance in 6 weeks that we could have just driven back to Perth. It would have been the same distance, just going backwards and forwards. But I also sat out and camped in the most remote place that I know of in Western Australia, 300 kilometers from the nearest bitumen road. That was pretty cool. I got offered a scholarship to go to New Zealand and study tectonics, where a continental crust is running right over the top of an oceanic crust. I got offered $10,000 a year to go and live there and do that and understand it. Maybe even go and live in Antarctica, which I would freaking love for 6 months. That would be awesome. I got to go out to Laverton and pretend to be Father Christmas, handing out presents to kids, the presidents as well, yes. Handing out presents to kids because this is something I was passionate about. This had nothing to do with science. This was something I got to do because I was at university here and they had a program, so I got to go and do it. At the same time, I got to go and teach science to those kids in their classroom. Does anyone know what the science program is for a high school in remote Australia? What they do is they give each one of the kids a book that has science from year 9 through year 12, or year 8 through year 12, and they give them access to a laptop. And in Laverton's case, the sports teacher stands out the front and does his marking while they go through the book by themselves. How easy would it be to study science under those conditions? Pretty blooming hard. And I got to go out and try and teach them. That was an incredible experience. Anyone who wants to be a science teacher, please do it. Even if it's only for a little while. We need those people. I got to, in New York, convince 250 people at once that drop bears are real. That was one of my favourite moments. I got to teach him Australian slang. But I also got to talk with scientists, with politicians, with people doing their internships at the United Nations. I got to live with those people for a year across the hallway from me. Next door to me, I met, I'm 100% sure, the future president of Burkina Faso. Incredible experiences because I wanted to go and study science in New York. I got to study with this guy in New York as well. That rock there, you were talking about ethanol before. You were talking about using renewable energy. It's all to avoid carbon dioxide, right? Basically. That rock there sucks in carbon dioxide just naturally, absorbs it into a form that stays there for about 10 to 20,000 years, and the mantle of the planet is made of this. I got to research with him ways that we could use that to essentially, for free, suck the carbon dioxide back to a reasonable level out of our atmosphere. Haven't got the answer yet, but I got to work with him on it. I got to study the economics of fly in, fly out. Why it's a good thing or a bad thing for a mine site, for a town, whether people should be living in a town that has fly in, fly out, how much fly in, fly out should you use? These are things that really impact on Western Australia. I'm sure at least a few of you have parents or at least uncles that do fly in, fly out and will be interested in those results. The important thing for all this is that you are there. Anyone know what the blue line is? Hey, you guys have done this before. 82 years is the average for an Aussie. Girls, you got a bit longer. Guys, you're going to die a bit sooner. Tough. You guys, roughly 15. That gives you 67 years in which to make up your mind on what you want to do with your life. Sorry? Okay, so if you took 67 years, it'd probably be a little late, but that's not factoring in the medicine 67 years from now. I don't care if you go this way, I don't care if you go that way, I don't care if you go this way. The thing is that what you've really got to do, the whole time what you've got to do is what he said, you've got to follow your passion. Because in the end, currently, people stay in their careers for up to about 5 years before they move on. 67 years, 13 careers. Pick a science. Go for it. Take your time. Your parents, your teachers, for the next 2 years, they're going to be saying the things like, get the best score you can. Study as hard as you can. Work your butt off. Don't do social things. Study that just because you can. Don't study it because you like it. You got 97 TER. Sorry, it's some other number these days. But you got 97. That means you have to go to UW and be a doctor. No. Please do not do that. Do what you want. Do what you care about. Do what you're passionate about. Ask yourself this question at every step of the way. And if this is your answer, that's fine. Absolutely fine, because you have that and space around it in which to search. All of it. Thank you.